In Maureen's book, The Map of Your Mind, Maureen talks a little bit about her process or her journey of that arc in her life of starting out as a student in English and literature at the age of 11, and her love of that,
Right.
and kind of there's that arc starting from there and into where you realized you really wanted to be writing. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that arc.
Well, I often describe it as a long and winding road, but a necessary and very valuable detour, really, to where coming back to the path that I'm now on, which I always wanted to be on and probably always should have been on, but needed lots more life experience before I could get there. So it's been a fantastic journey, actually. And yes, it did start around 11, no, earlier. No, it definitely started earlier, when I just started to read and loved books. And I mean, people often say, did you always want to be a writer? And my answer is no, not really, because I didn't associate it with a career. I just knew I wanted to be in that world where all the magic happens and all the...
Like in the stories?
In the stories, yeah, in the world of the imagination. Right. And so that was always there. And then I became a therapist myself for a long time, which was fantastic. At some point started this creative groups, which were unbelievably fabulous. And that just was like a river that just kept going on, and all these things kind of saying, all right, now what do you want to do now? And certainly the creative groups, I often would say, okay, I'm going to practice what I preach. I can't keep saying to you guys, like, you've got to follow your heart and your passion and what really, really excites you, and not totally do it myself.
And I remember that, and I remember the creative group we had up at your cottage.
Yes.
And it was like this realization for you of you wanted to walk the talk.
Yes, it's funny you should mention that, because I don't think I told you this, but I did a talk not too long ago, and two of the women who were, one of them who was on that particular workshop, Lucille, came to the talk, because she lives out in Oakville. And I mentioned that. I said, we were all on this fabulous weekend, and Lucille was one who said, well, what about you? And I'm thinking, yes. And she didn't remember that at all. That's life, right? Incredible turning point in my life. And Lou said, no, I don't remember that. Well, thank you anyway. It was great. So I did start to say I better do something as well as, myself. And so I began to write more seriously, because it was always words for me. But certainly I called the creative groups creative expression groups, because I felt that there were other people who weren't only into words and writing, but like you, who were very visual and talented with the visual images and among other things. So I know that I wanted to say, you don't just have to write, you can do whatever you want.
Right. Well, I was thinking about too, like way back in the first creative groups, you talked about like our mother's gardens kind of thing. Like,
yes.
Remember?
Oh, Kerry. Oh, yes, I know. Oh, thanks for reminding me. No, that was In Search of Our Mother's Gardens. And she was the first one, really, to open my eyes to that concept that, well, I always felt everyone was creative, but she talked about her own life, which was very poor, Southern black, really hard, but her mother always had a beautiful garden. And that was how she expressed herself. And I remember being so struck by that, because I felt that we would often limit the idea of creative to the visual arts, music, writing, but it's not true. Like, it can be absolutely anywhere. And certainly in that case, it was her garden. And I often say I have a very dear friend who puts the most gorgeous table, you know, when we're having dinner, and it's beautiful. It's a work of art every time, and she just kind of does it, you know. But if I'd say, "Oh, you're so creative," she wouldn't think like that. She wouldn't think this was part of it. So I remember bringing that very much into one of the groups, and it was really exciting to talk about that, to say, okay, what about your mother, you know? Because where was the creativity for your mother? Because a different generation didn't often think the way we do, of thinking they were entitled or privileged or could get out there and do what they wanted to do. It was very much at home.
Yes.
So that was really exciting to do that exercise, and people were writing things. And I'll never forget, this one young woman said, well, I'm sorry, I can't find anything, because her mother was an alcoholic, and she said she never did anything. And I said, well, just think for a minute, how did she express herself? And she thought, and she said, well, you know what, she used to move the furniture around a lot. And it was true, like in that very limited way, this woman was trying to express herself, was trying to say that creative drive is always there. And I'm glad it is. Sometimes it just needs to be encouraged.
And which is so moving. And it's also giving that person an opportunity to shift her perspective on her mother. You know, which isn't to say that you still don't have issues that might come up from that relationship and that kind of thing, but it just gives you that other perspective, like something shifts.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
a different appreciation of that person.
Yeah.
And also a kind of link, you know, like I'm trying to find my own creativity, and where did my mother's creativity or my father's creativity kind of flow into their lives.
No, that's absolutely true, because in that particular case, this woman was going through psychotherapy, and she was still at the sort of very angry, my mother let me down, you know, she was a drunk stage. And finding it hard to find anything there. And so it opened up this sense of our mother having this aspect to herself.
Yeah, and I'm thinking now too of our creative groups again, that often we would begin our creative groups by talking about like what was going on in our lives. And of course we wouldn't, you know, it would be something intense, right? And I'm thinking about the intense moments.
Oh no, not that group, no.
Never.
Very bland.
Never. And then you would say to us, okay, so maybe list 5 different things that have popped up for us.
Yes.
And then we would choose one, and then we would write on that one, or we would do a collage on that one, or we would, you know, have some kind of artistic response to that. And then there was an outlet for that to be taken and expressed in another way.
Yes, because to me, I couldn't even probably analyze it. I don't really want to, but I do know that that's therapeutic. You know, that to say, to put something into a medium that's outside of yourself and have it witnessed, because it's not, that was crucial, being in the groups. It wasn't just me, one person, or a solitary thing, because other people were there kind of accepting that or holding that. And as you know, I said, please, no criticism, however positive, just respond.
Yes.
And so that's what, and it really worked.